She married the taxi driver for a contract, but he was never poor. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The rain poured hard over New York that night, painting silver streaks on the glass windows of a yellow cab parked under the dim streetlight. Inside sat Emma Blake, a 26-year-old receptionist whose world had been crumbling piece by piece. Her mother's hospital bills were due in less than a week. Her savings were gone, her job hours cut, and every door she knocked on had closed in her face. She stared at the raindrops racing each other down the window and whispered, "I just need one miracle." The door opened, and a tall man stepped out of the darkness. His black coat dripped with rain, his face half hidden beneath the brim of his cap. He looked like a taxi driver finishing his last shift, but the way he carried himself, calm, precise, hinted otherwise. "Miss Blake?" His voice was low, smooth, confident. She blinked in surprise. "Yes, that is me. Do I know you?" The man glanced around, ensuring no one was near, then handed her a sealed brown envelope. "You do not know me, but I know about your situation. What I am about to offer may sound insane, but it is real." Emma frowned, clutching her worn purse closer. "I do not have time for jokes." He met her eyes. "It is not a joke. Marry me. For 1 month. It will solve every problem you have." The words hung heavy between them, louder than the thunder overhead. Emma stared at him, trying to process whether she had heard correctly. "Marry you? You are a taxi driver. I cannot even pay rent. Why would you want to marry me?" He exhaled slowly, rainwater sliding down his jaw. "Because I need a wife on paper, someone real, not another socialite or model pretending to care. You will be well compensated. $10,000 in advance, and I will cover your mother's surgery in full." Emma's breath caught. It was the exact amount the hospital demanded. Still, her pride and fear tangled in her chest. "Why me?" she whispered. The man gave a faint, tired smile. "Because you are the only person who did not judge me the night I drove you home from the hospital. You said thank you, and no one has said that to me in a very long time." A flash of recognition crossed her eyes. The same voice, the same cab from that desperate night. She had been crying quietly in the back seat, and the driver had simply handed her a tissue, saying, "You are stronger than you think." Now here he was, making an offer that sounded like madness and salvation at once. "What is the catch?" she asked, her voice trembling. 30 days. No questions. No real affection required. You play the role, and when the deal ends, you walk away with your future secure. Lightning cracked across the sky as if sealing the deal before she could speak. Emma looked down at the envelope he had placed in her hand. Inside, she could see the edge of a legal contract and a check with more zeros than she had ever seen in her life. She looked up, meeting his eyes. "Who are you really?" The man paused, then said quietly, "My name is Liam Carter." The name rang faintly familiar, but she could not place it. "And what happens if I say no?" He gave a small shrug, stepping back into the rain. "Then I will find someone else tomorrow. But something tells me you are not ready to give up yet." Emma stood frozen, heart pounding in her chest as the cab's taillights disappeared into the storm. She stared at the contract in her shaking hands, rain soaking the paper. Her mind screamed no, but her heart whispered, "You asked for a miracle." And somewhere deep inside, she knew this was it. The next morning, Emma sat at the small wooden table in her apartment, the brown envelope lying untouched beside her cold cup of coffee. She had barely slept, her mind looping through every word the man had said. Liam Carter. The name echoed in her head like a riddle. She had seen it somewhere before but could not remember where. The rain had stopped, and sunlight spilled weakly through the curtains, but the air inside felt heavy. Emma's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared. "Have you decided?" Her fingers trembled as she typed back, "I need more time." Within seconds, another message came. "Meet me at the Franklin Hotel at noon. We will discuss details, no pressure." She stared at the screen for a long moment, then closed her eyes and whispered, "You asked for a miracle, remember?" By noon, she stood in front of the Franklina marble building she had only seen in magazines. Her second-hand heels clicked on the lobby floor as she entered, feeling out of place among the polished guests and soft music. The receptionist smiled, "Mr. Carter is expecting you, Miss Blake." Emma's heart raced. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened, Liam was waiting by the window of a penthouse suite, dressed in a gray suit that made the idea of him being a taxi driver almost absurd. He turned as she entered, his calm gaze steady. "You came." "I should not have," she murmured, clutching her purse. "Then why did you?" he asked gently. She had no answer. He gestured toward the table, where two folders lay side by side. "One holds the contract. The other holds proof that I can pay for your mother's surgery tomorrow morning." Emma hesitated, her throat tightening. "Why me, Liam? Why this?" He leaned against the table, folding his arms. "I told you before. My father built a company that now sits under the scrutiny of a family trust. His will requires that I be married before the end of this quarter to retain control. I do not have time for pretense or social games. I need someone who will not play me for money or fame. Someone real." She blinked, stunned. "So you want a pretend wife to protect your empire?" "Exactly. You will have every legal protection and freedom. It will last 30 days, just long enough for the trust's condition to be satisfied. After that, you are free. And your mother's bills will be gone." Emma's eyes dropped to the folders. "This is insane." "Perhaps," he admitted, his tone quiet, "but I believe you are brave enough to do what others would not." She bit her lip, staring at the contract. The words, "temporary marriage agreement," glared up at her in bold print. Beneath it, space for 2 signatures. "What happens if I back out halfway?" she asked. "Then you still keep the payment already made, but I lose everything." His honesty disarmed her. He did not sound like a man chasing wealth, he sounded like a man cornered by his own legacy. "Why not tell your board the truth?" she asked softly. "That would make me appear weak," he said simply, "and weakness is not allowed in my world." Silence filled the room. The city skyline shimmered beyond the glass, indifferent to the choices being made inside. Emma swallowed hard. "You really believe I can do this?" Liam's expression softened. "I do. You see the world without masks, Emma. That is rare." Her breath caught at the sound of her name on his lips. For a moment, she felt something stir, something dangerous and fragile. Finally, she nodded, her voice trembling. "Then tell me what I have to do." Liam exhaled slowly, almost relieved. "First, sign the agreement. Second, move into my residence tomorrow. There will be stylists and media coaches to help you adapt. You will attend one public gala as my wife. After that, we announce our peaceful separation. Clean, professional, no drama." Emma picked up the pen. Her hand shook as she pressed it to paper, her name looping across the signature line. Liam added his name beside hers with steady precision. The sound of the pen scratching felt final, binding. He closed the folder gently. "Welcome to the arrangement, Mrs. Carter." Emma stared at him, the title echoing through her chest like a foreign melody. For the first time in years, she felt the floor of her old life give way beneath her feet. She had stepped into another world, one built on power, secrets, and a marriage that was never meant to be real. The next day came faster than Emma expected. A sleek black car waited outside her apartment at exactly 9 o'clock. Her few belongings fit into a single worn suitcase, a quiet reminder of the world she was leaving behind. As the driver opened the door, she took one last look at the cracked paint of her old building and whispered, "Goodbye." The car rolled through the city, past the noise and the gray, until skyscrapers gave way to manicured gates and winding drives. The Carter estate stood like something from another world: marble pillars, glass balconies, and a view of the river that shimmered under the morning sun. Emma's heart pounded. This was no ordinary life. The staff greeted her with polite smiles, their eyes curious but restrained. A woman in her 50s, elegant and brisk, approached. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter. I am Ms. Davis, the household manager. Mr. Carter asked me to show you to your quarters." Emma followed her up a grand staircase to a spacious bedroom that overlooked the gardens. Everything gleamed: silk curtains, white roses on the table, a walk-in closet already filled with clothes in her size. She froze. How did he? Ms. Davis smiled faintly. "Mr. Carter is a man who prefers to be prepared." When the door closed, Emma sat on the edge of the bed, the silence pressing around her. She felt like an intruder in a fairy tale, one signature away from being found out. A knock came. Liam stepped inside, now in casual slacks and a crisp white shirt. He looked more human in daylight, less like the mysterious figure from the night before. "I wanted to make sure you arrived safely," he said. "This place is overwhelming," she admitted. "You will get used to it. There are a few things we need to review before tomorrow's media dinner." He handed her a slim binder titled Public Presentation Protocol. Inside were pages of instructions: how to address guests, how to smile, even how to hold his arm during photographs. "This feels like a performance," she said quietly. "It is," he replied without hesitation. "Every person in my world performs. You just have to know your lines." Emma looked up. "And what are yours?" For a moment, he did not answer. Then he said softly, "To convince everyone that I am not falling apart." She studied his face, seeing the exhaustion behind his perfect composure. "You do not have to act with me," she said. His gaze met hers, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "Maybe that is why I chose you," he murmured. The moment hung there, heavy and quiet. He cleared his throat. "Dinner is at 8. Wear something simple but elegant. The staff will help." When he left, Emma opened the closet again, running her fingers over the dresses: silk, satin, colors she had never dared to wear. She chose a navy gown and whispered to her reflection, 30 days. Just 30 days. That evening, the dining room glowed under chandeliers. Liam sat at the head of the table, reading documents while a chef served a delicate meal neither of them touched. The silence was thick until Emma asked, "Do you ever eat in peace?" He looked up, startled, then laughed quietly, the first real laugh she had heard from him. "Not often. Peace is expensive." "Then maybe you are overpaying," she said with a small smile. His lips curved. "Careful, Mrs. Carter. You might make me believe this marriage is real." Her heart skipped, but she forced a laugh. "It is just good acting, remember?" His expression softened. "You are better at it than you think." Later that night, Emma stood on the balcony outside her room, the city lights flickering in the distance. Below, she saw Liam alone in the courtyard, tie loosened, staring up at the same stars. For the first time, she wondered what kind of loneliness lived inside a man who had everything. In her hand, she still held the pen she had used to sign the contract. It gleamed faintly in the moonlight, a reminder of the line she had crossed. Somewhere between duty and deceit, her heart had started to blur the difference. And though she tried to tell herself this was only business, the truth whispered louder with every breath: she was beginning to care. The next morning began with a schedule printed on fine paper and slipped under Emma's door. Every hour was mapped out: styling, etiquette training, media rehearsal. Her life had turned into a calendar she no longer controlled. Still, she followed it quietly. If she was going to play this role, she would play it well. A stylist named Clara arrived with a small team and a rack of clothing. You have lovely posture, Clara said, adjusting the collar of Emma's white blouse. But you walk like you are apologizing to the floor. Shoulders back, chin up. You are Mrs. Carter now. Emma tried to smile, but her reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger, hair perfectly styled, makeup soft yet deliberate. She barely recognized herself. Later that day, Liam joined her in the living room for a media briefing. He looked flawless in a charcoal suit, composed as always, but there was something gentler in his eyes when he saw her. You look perfect, he said simply. You are sure this is not too much, she asked. It is exactly enough, he replied. Tonight, people will judge you before you speak. Let them see someone who belongs here. His words steadied her more than he realized. That evening, they arrived at a private restaurant downtown for a dinner with investors and board members. Cameras flashed as soon as they stepped out of the car. Liam extended his arm, and Emma placed her hand on it, the sound of shutters echoing like applause. Inside, the room buzzed with polite laughter and the clinking of silverware. Conversation flowed around them, full of numbers and deals, but Emma kept her focus on remembering everything Clara had taught her: small nods, measured smiles, never interrupt. At first, it worked. Until one of the guests, a woman in a sequined dress, leaned forward with a knowing smirk. So, Mrs. Carter, she said, voice dripping with amusement, I heard you used to work as a receptionist before your whirlwind romance with our favorite CEO. Quite the Cinderella story. The table chuckled. Emma felt her cheeks burn. She glanced at Liam, but he stayed calm, sipping his wine. That is true, Emma said evenly, surprising herself. I did work hard for years, and perhaps that is what made him notice me. He knows I understand the value of what cannot be bought. The laughter faded. Liam's eyes lifted, pride flickering behind them. Indeed, he said, his tone firm. My wife has something many in this room have forgotten: grace under pressure. The air shifted. The same woman looked away, embarrassed. The rest of the dinner passed more easily after that, and by the time dessert arrived, Emma could finally breathe again. As they left, Liam offered her his coat even though the night was mild. You handled that perfectly, he said. I was terrified, she admitted. You did not look it. You made me look good, Emma. She looked up at him, surprised by the warmth in his voice. I thought that was the point of this arrangement, she teased softly. Maybe, he said with a faint smile, but tonight it felt like something else. The drive back to the mansion was quiet, filled with the low hum of the engine and unspoken thoughts. When they arrived, Emma thanked him and turned toward her room, but Liam's voice stopped her. Emma, he said, I know this is not easy. You have stepped into a life that is not yours, but you are doing it with more integrity than anyone I know. She looked at him, her chest tightening. You make it sound like you have known me for years. Maybe I just finally met someone real, he said softly, then walked away down the hall. That night, Emma stood before the mirror again, removing her earrings one by one. The woman staring back at her no longer looked like a stranger. She looked like someone learning to exist in two worlds at once: the world of contracts and cold logic, and the quieter world that lived behind Liam Carter's guarded eyes. Somewhere between the two, she felt herself slipping further from the promise she made: keep her heart out of this. The line between duty and desire was beginning to fade, and deep down, she feared what would happen when it disappeared completely. The following week unfolded like a carefully written script. Every morning began with rehearsed smiles, every evening ended with the sound of silence echoing through the marble halls. Emma played her role flawlessly, but each day it became harder to remember that it was just a role. One afternoon, while reviewing charity proposals in Liam's office, she noticed a photo frame on his desk turned face down. What is that? She asked. Liam glanced at it, then hesitated. Nothing important. She tilted it upright anyway. The picture showed a younger Liam with his father, both standing in front of the Carter Enterprises building. His father's arm rested proudly on his shoulder. He looks kind, Emma said softly. He was, Liam replied, voice low. But in business, kindness was treated like weakness. When he passed away, the board tore apart everything he built. The trust's marriage clause was his way of protecting me from them. If I am married, they cannot vote me out. Emma listened quietly. For the first time, she understood that behind his perfection was a man still fighting ghosts. You carry too much alone, she said. He smiled faintly. And you carry too much that is not yours. Their eyes met for a second too long before the intercom buzzed. Mr. Carter, your car is ready for the board meeting. He stood, the moment breaking. I will be late tonight, he said. Stay for dinner if you wish. She nodded, but after he left, the mansion felt heavier than ever. Hours later, unable to sleep, Emma wandered into the garden. The air smelled of rain and jasmine. Somewhere near the fountain, she saw a faint light flickering from the greenhouse. Curiosity led her there. Inside, she found Liam in shirt-sleeves, kneeling by a row of white roses, hands covered in soil. He looked up, startled but not embarrassed. You should be asleep, he said. So should you, she replied. I come here when I need to remember something real, he admitted, brushing dirt from his fingers. These were my mother's. She said flowers only bloom when they are not being watched too closely. I guess I never learned to let things just grow. Emma stepped closer. You are doing fine, she said softly. Am I? He asked, half smiling. You seem to be the only one who thinks so. She looked around the greenhouse, the air warm and fragrant. Maybe that is because I see the part of you no one else bothers to look at. Liam stared at her for a moment, the sound of rain beginning again on the glass roof. Then, almost without realizing it, he reached up and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was small, but it shattered every wall between them. Her breath caught, but she did not step back. The thunder outside rumbled, masking the silence that followed. Finally, Liam lowered his hand. We should get back inside, he said quietly. Yes, she whispered, though neither of them moved. The next evening brought another challenge. A charity gala, hosted at the Carter Hotel, was their first major public appearance together. Cameras flashed the moment they entered. Reporters shouted questions about their marriage, about the company, about love. Liam answered with calm precision, his hand resting lightly on Emma's back. To everyone watching, they looked perfect. But when a reporter called out, Mr. Carter, how does it feel to find love so suddenly? Emma saw something flicker in his eyes, a mix of truth and fear. He looked at her then, as if searching for an answer she did not yet know how to give. It feels, he said finally, like the first thing in my life that is not planned. The crowd laughed softly, charmed, but Emma's heart pounded. Later that night, when the cameras were gone and the lights dimmed, Liam walked her to her door. You were incredible tonight, he said. So were you, she whispered. For a moment, they stood there, suspended in a silence that was not awkward anymore. It was charged, real, dangerous. Then he took a step closer. Emma, he said softly, if this were not a contract, she looked up, meeting his gaze. Then what? He exhaled slowly. Then I would be in trouble. She smiled faintly. You already are. He laughed quietly, the sound low and honest. When he finally turned to leave, she pressed her back to the door, her heart racing. 30 days, she reminded herself. But her heart no longer cared about time limits. Somewhere between the script and the truth, she had fallen into the part she was never supposed to play, the part of a woman who had fallen in love for real. The days that followed the gala felt different. Something invisible had shifted between them, something neither dared to name. Liam became warmer, less guarded, and Emma found herself smiling without pretending. The contract still existed, but it was beginning to feel like the least important thing in their world. One morning, she joined him for breakfast in the sunroom, a rare sight since he was always buried in meetings. The sunlight spilled over the table, catching on the edge of his coffee cup. You have that look, he said, glancing up from his tablet. What look? She asked. The one that says you are thinking about something dangerous. She laughed softly. I was just thinking how strange this all is. A few weeks ago, I was taking the subway to work. Now I am drinking imported coffee with a man who owns half the city. Do you miss it? He asked. She thought for a moment. The subway or the life I had before? Either. Sometimes, she admitted. It was simple. I knew who I was. Liam leaned back, watching her. You still do. You just refuse to see how extraordinary that is. She met his eyes, and for a moment, everything around them fell quiet. He cleared his throat. I have to go out of town tomorrow. A site inspection for the new foundation center. I could use someone who actually understands people instead of spreadsheets. Come with me. Me, she said, startled. Yes, you. Think of it as part of the performance. She smiled. That line is losing its power. The next day, they drove for hours through open countryside until the city skyline faded behind them. The place Liam took her to was nothing like the polished world she had seen before. It was an old community building on the edge of town, worn but full of life. Volunteers painted walls, children played near the fence, and laughter filled the air. This is what the Carter Foundation funds, Liam said, his voice almost tender. Places like this. My father believed success meant nothing if it did not build something for others. Emma watched him speak to the staff, shaking hands, listening intently. For the first time, she saw him not as a CEO but as a man trying to live up to a legacy. Later, as they stood outside, she asked quietly, Do you ever wish you could start over? Forget the name, the company, the pressure? He looked at her for a long moment. Every day, he said. And if I did, I would start with you in that taxi again. The words stole her breath. The sky was turning gold with sunset, and for a heartbeat, it felt like the world had stopped. Liam, she began, but he shook his head gently. You do not have to say anything. They drove back in silence, but it was a comfortable kind of quiet, full of things unspoken yet understood. That night, after dinner, Emma found herself on the balcony again, unable to sleep. The city lights glittered below, and she heard footsteps behind her. You should rest, Liam said softly. So should you, she replied. He stepped beside her, looking out at the skyline. Do you ever think about what happens after the 30 days are over? All the time, she confessed. And? I do not have an answer, she said. Neither do I, he admitted. The wind lifted a strand of her hair, and without thinking, he reached out to brush it back. This time, she did not look away. The distance between them disappeared as he leaned closer, his hand still at her cheek. Emma, he whispered, as if saying her name was a secret he had been holding too long. For a moment, they stood on the edge of something neither could control. Then the world came back in a single breath, and he stepped away, guilt flickering in his eyes. I am sorry, he said. You should not be, she whispered. But we both know how dangerous this is. He nodded, his voice low. Yes. Because it feels real. She looked at him, her heart pounding. Maybe it is. He turned toward the door, his jaw tight. If it is, that changes everything. And just like that, he was gone, leaving her alone under the night sky. Emma pressed a hand over her heart, realizing that the moment she had feared most had already happened. Somewhere between duty and desire, she had fallen completely in love with the man she was never meant to keep. The next morning, the illusion of calm shattered. Emma woke to the sound of her phone vibrating on the nightstand. Messages flooded the screen, headlines flashing across social media. Carter marriage exposed, contract wife revealed. Her chest tightened as she scrolled through the photos, images of her and Liam at the gala, their smiles now twisted by gossip captions. Her phone rang again, the caller ID showing an unknown number. Miss Blake, a sharp voice said the moment she answered, this is Valerie Stone from the Daily Ledger. Would you like to comment on the accusations that your marriage to Mr. Carter was arranged for financial gain? Emma's heart pounded. No comment, she said quickly and hung up. Downstairs, the house buzzed with tension. Security staff moved in and out, voices low and urgent. When she found Liam in his office, he was standing by the window, phone pressed to his ear, his expression carved in stone. I do not care what the board thinks, he said sharply. Handle the narrative before noon. He ended the call and turned toward her. You saw it, he said, his voice low. Emma nodded. Someone leaked the contract, Liam. They know everything. Not everything, he said, jaw tight. But enough to hurt us both. What will happen? She asked. The board will demand my resignation. Investors will panic. And you, he stopped, his voice catching. You will be dragged through the press. Then let me speak, she said. I can tell them the truth, that this started as a business deal but it became real. He looked at her sharply. No. They would never believe you, and I will not let them tear you apart. But if I stay silent, they will think I did it for money. And if you speak, they will destroy you for daring to love me, he said. I can handle the fallout, Emma. You do not have to. Do not tell me what I can handle, she said, her voice trembling. You promised honesty, remember? He exhaled, the fight leaving his body. Then be honest with me now. Do you regret it? She met his eyes. Not for a second. The room fell silent. Outside, reporters had already gathered beyond the gates, their voices faint but rising. Liam walked to his desk, picked up the framed picture of his father, and set it face down again. It seems I have failed him twice, he said bitterly. Once as a son, and once as a man. Emma stepped closer, her voice soft. No, you have not. You just forgot that love is not something you can manage. Before he could answer, Ms. Davis entered the room. Sir, the board has called an emergency session. They want you at headquarters immediately. Liam nodded without looking away from Emma. Stay inside, he said quietly. Do not speak to anyone. When he left, the house felt unbearably empty. Emma stood alone in the vast office, staring at the door he had just walked through. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the glass wall, a woman caught between love and scandal. She whispered to herself, they can call it fake, but what I feel is not. Outside, the flash of cameras grew brighter, signaling the storm that was about to break over both of their lives. By the time evening fell, the world had already chosen its story. News anchors dissected every detail of their so-called fake marriage, analysts speculated about corporate manipulation, and Liam Carter's name trended across every major outlet. At the mansion, Emma watched the coverage in silence, her hands trembling as she turned off the television. The walls seemed to close in around her, heavy with judgment she could not escape. Then the front gates opened. A fleet of black cars rolled up the driveway, their headlights slicing through the dark. Liam had returned, surrounded by his legal team. His suit was still perfect, but his face looked hollow. They voted, he said when he found her in the foyer. The board has suspended me until an internal review is complete. Emma's throat tightened. Liam, I am so sorry. Do not be, he said quietly. I knew this would happen the moment I saw that headline. But what I did not expect was how much I would care about what you think of me. She stepped closer. You think I care about money or titles? All I care about is that you told me the truth. He looked at her for a long time before speaking again. I did not tell you everything, he said. The man who leaked the contract is my cousin, Mark Carter. He has been waiting for a reason to take over the company. He thinks this scandal will give him exactly that. Emma felt a surge of anger. Then fight back. Show them who you really are. It is not that simple, he said. The legal department advised me to stay silent. Every word I say could be used against the company. Then I will speak, she said. I am not part of your company, Liam. I can tell the truth in my own words. No, he said firmly. If you do that, they will drag you through every talk show and gossip column for months. I will not let them ruin you. Maybe it is not your choice, she said, her voice shaking. I have been silent my whole life. Not anymore. Before he could stop her, she turned and walked toward the main hall. The staff and reporters outside gasped when the front doors opened. Cameras flashed as she stepped into the cold night, the storm wind whipping her hair across her face. She stopped at the edge of the marble steps, the world's eyes fixed on her. My name is Emma Blake, she said, her voice clear and strong. Yes, our marriage began as a contract. But what none of you understand is that a contract cannot fake compassion, or honesty, or the way a person changes you. Liam Carter may be a businessman, but he is also a man who gave me back my faith in people. Reporters shouted questions, flashes lighting up the night, but she held her ground. If loving him makes me foolish, then I will live with that. Because for the first time in my life, something about me is not for sale. Inside, Liam watched from the window, his heart pounding. Every word she spoke cut through the noise, reclaiming the story that had been twisted against them. When she finally turned to go back inside, he met her halfway, eyes full of something between awe and love. You did not have to do that, he said softly. Yes, I did, she whispered. Because this is not just your fight anymore. For the first time in days, Liam smiled, the weight on his shoulders lifting just enough for him to breathe again. Then let us finish it together, he said. And this time, she did not hesitate when he reached for her hand. The scandal did not vanish overnight, but truth has a way of surviving when it is spoken with heart. In the weeks that followed, the tide began to turn. Footage of Emma's speech spread across the internet, drawing millions of views. Instead of mockery, the comments filled with support. People called her brave, real, the woman who stood for love in a world obsessed with power. The board's investigation uncovered the truth. Mark Carter had leaked confidential documents and fabricated emails to frame Liam. When the news broke, he was removed from the company, and the board voted unanimously to reinstate Liam as CEO. But when the legal team came to inform him, Liam only asked one question: has the foundation's funding for the community center been approved? When they said yes, he smiled for the first time in days. A week later, the Carter Foundation reopened the center they had visited together, now bearing a new plaque at its entrance, in honor of compassion and courage. Reporters gathered again, but this time, there was no scandal, no noise, only applause. Emma stood beside Liam as he gave his speech. His voice carried through the hall, calm but full of emotion. The past months have reminded me that integrity is not a business strategy. It is a choice. And love, real love, is not a liability. It is the greatest investment of all. When he finished, he turned to her before everyone and said, Emma, you once told me flowers only bloom when they are not watched too closely. So I stopped watching. And you grew into the light that saved me. The crowd erupted in applause as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope, the same kind he had once handed her that rainy night. Inside was no contract this time, only a simple handwritten note that said, no clauses. No time limits. Just forever. He knelt before her, his eyes steady. Emma Blake, will you make this real? Tears shimmered in her eyes as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. For real. The hall filled with cheers as he slipped the ring on her finger, the cameras flashing like stars. But for Emma, the world blurred into silence except for the sound of his heartbeat when he pulled her close. Months later, their wedding was small and quiet, held in the greenhouse where the first walls between them had fallen. White roses surrounded them, blooming under the soft glow of fairy lights. Ms. Davis cried quietly in the back row. When they exchanged vows, Emma laughed through her tears. You promised me 30 days, she said. Liam smiled. I am breaking that contract. She took his hands. Good. So am I. As they kissed, the camera panned to the pen Emma had once used to sign their fake marriage contract, now displayed inside a glass frame on the reception table. Below it, a small card read, "The first signature that changed everything." Outside, the city lights glimmered on the horizon, but for once, neither of them looked back. Because sometimes the most extraordinary love stories do not begin with promises of forever, they begin with a single impossible deal, and two hearts brave enough to make it real.